So Donald Trump actually had a town hall yesterday. And from the parts that I've seen from the town hall, man, it really didn't look too good. So if he's going to perform this, I don't know if town halls are necessarily performances, even though they kind of are. Whether or not that'd be unfortunately. From the parts that I've seen, he didn't really seem to do a very good job here. And this is actually a question from obviously an African American man who's actually a Jill Stein voter. So he's actually a progressive. And you can tell by his universal critiques of all of the former presidents, Democrat or Republican, when it comes to lack of action with the African American community. But he stumps Trump here. Trump has no response but to tap dance. Go ahead and check this out.
Another question on this subject from Pastor Carl Day. He's from Philadelphia, voted for Jill Stein last time.
How you doing, Mr. President?
Good.
You've coined the phrase, make America great again.
Right.
When has America been great for African Americans in the ghetto of America? Are you aware of how tone deaf that comes off to African American community?
Well, I can say this. We have tremendous African American support. You've probably seen it in the polls. We're doing extremely well with African American, Hispanic American at levels that you've rarely seen a Republican have. If you talk about make America great, if you look at just prior to, and I'm talking about for the black community, you look just prior to this horrible situation coming in from China when the virus came in, that was probably the highest point, home ownership for the black community. Home ownership, lower crime, the best jobs they've ever had, highest income, the best employment numbers they've ever had. If you go back and you want to look over many years, you could just go back 6 or 7 months from now. That was the best single moment in the history of the African American people in this country, I think, I would say.
Well, I mean, your statement is, though, make it great again. So historically, the African American experience, especially in these ghettos that have been redlined, historically, these ghettos that have systemically been set up and treated the way that they have been, the conditions of the drugs, the guns, and everything else that actually created the symptoms for what we see, that you profess to be just the democratic cities in themselves. These things have historically been happening for African Americans in these ghettos, and we have not been seeing a change. Quite frankly, under your administration, under the Obama's administration, under the Bush, under the Clinton, the very same things happen, and the very same systems and cycles continue to ensue. And we need to see, because you say again, we need to see when was that great, because that pushes us back to a time in which we cannot identify with such greatness. And I mean, you've said everything else about choking and everything else, but you have yet to address and acknowledge that there's been a race problem in America.
So if you go, well, I hope there's not a race problem. I can tell you there's none with me, because I have great respect for all races, for everybody. This country is great because of it. But when you go back 6 months and you take a look at what was happening, you can't even compare that with past administrations. When you look at income levels and a lot of things because of the job situation where they had the lowest income, the best unemployment numbers they've ever had, the black community by far. And that was solving a lot of problems. And you know what else it was? It was bringing people together. I was starting to get, just before this was, we were having a long run of success. I was starting to get calls from Democrats that, hey, it's starting to work. Let's get together. People that you would never have thought this would have happened with. There was going to be unity, but unfortunately that was hurt because we got set back. But now, I think next year is going to be one of our best years economically.
But income equality is still, income equality is higher. So, I mean, jobs can be produced, but at the same time, in a lot of these big major cities where African Americans are underserved, under-resourced, that's an $8 hour job. Does not mean that they can necessarily afford to live where they have to live or where they've been living at for the last 20 years.
Well, the income inequality, which I agree with you, is a problem. I always agreed with that. But if you look under President Obama and Biden, the income inequality was phenomenal.
So this is a question that a lot of people have been asking. Not just black people, but people in general saying, wait a second, when exactly was America great? What time frame are you trying to take it back to? Times of segregation? Are you trying to take it to times of redlining? Like which time frame are you actually taking it back to? And so he's basically saying, like, wait a second, do you have any idea how insulting that is to African Americans and African American community to essentially be saying, oh man, we're going to make America great again, which means it was great at some point for black people. When was America great for black people? He has zero response, so he has to pivot to stuff that has nothing to do with that question. First of all, he tries to bring up the African American support, which some polls do indicate he's actually getting more than typical Republicans, so I will give him that by a couple points. But I will have to see the results for when the election comes to figure out whether or not they're true. But when he keeps bringing up these statistics about black unemployment, I wanted to show you this chart. So this is a chart of unemployment from 2008 to 2019. And so what you can see here is Obama, when he first came in here, he had it here, Great Recession, hops in. It's all the way up at 15%, and it goes all the way up to over 16, I believe. I think it's 16.6 here. And so he leaves office like right here. So he brings it down to, I think it was like 7% or something, 7, maybe close to 8%. And Trump brought it down here to like 6%, 6-ish percent. So he brought it down about 1 percentage point. Meanwhile, Obama brought it down all the way from here down to here. Trump brings it down 1%, and he's taking credit for these record-breaking unemployment numbers, which, by the way, he was calling the unemployment numbers complete bogus when he was actually running for president in the Republican primary in 2016. But are you serious? This loser just coasted off of all of Obama's economic gains, and I hate Obama, but Obama had a lot of private sector gains because that's what he does, and Trump literally just skated off of all of it. And the one time where, or 2 major times where he actually had to respond to something serious, he completely flopped. And so when he brings up the coronavirus as an excuse, there's nobody to blame but yourself for your own response to the pandemic. You could have easily taken this and responded like a leader would, and you actually could have had a cakewalk to the election, because everyone would have been like, oh, look, Trump's a leader. But instead, you lied to the public, you downplayed it, people died, people got infected, the economy got shut down, people's lives were altered completely. You failed big time, massively, and you're just trying to steal credit. This is hilarious. You took it down 1%, and all of a sudden you're going to take the credit for these record gains? He came in right at this point, okay, in 2017, which is hilarious. All right, absolutely hilarious. So, and some of the other parts I've seen of this town hall have also been pretty bad for Trump, but I'll try to catch some other parts of it. But this wolf, he totally got destroyed.